whenever I see something that sounds, artificial, superficial, or let's say ChatGPT-ish. So I would ask it to remove those words and, try and make it more human.
ChatGPT just keeps on giving me too many questions, too many answers.
So again, coming back to where do we draw the line? How do we know that this is what would work? Hi guys, welcome to our podcast. So I'm Vikas Deneja, Manager Content here at Virtual Employee. And I have with me Aachal Baweja, one of our senior content writers. And today we'll be discussing content, of course, since I manage the content team. And we'll discuss creativity and we'll also address the elephant in the room, that is AI. Okay. Now, of course, most of you think that AI is quite useful. Most of us have been using ChatGPT, Gemini, and whatnot. We think that AI is, the solution to all our problems. But in today's podcast, we'll discover that that might not be the case. Okay, we might have a different opinion. Now, over to Aachal. I'll shoot my first question and let's see how the discussion goes. Aachal, welcome to the podcast. So let me set some pretext first and then I'll shoot my first question. Okay, you could agree to disagree, but I believe that all creative people, including writers, okay, are overthinkers. I personally am an overthinker in my life, in my work, everywhere that I go, I tend to overthink things, right? So when it comes to AI, the first thing that I would want to know is when you use AI, let's say ChatGPT, let's say you enter a prompt, write a blog on XYZ for 500 words. So would you pick up the first draft or would you overthink it and, keep on doing it repeatedly?
First of all, Vikas, thank you so much for introducing me to the podcast and for your first question. Like you said, agree to disagree. I think I would completely agree with it that most creative people in this world are overthinkers because we're never satisfied. We just constantly want improvements in our work. And to answer your question, would I pick the first draft? I don't necessarily think so because as we talked about it, so we constantly want changes in it. We constantly want to strive to make the content piece better. So I don't think I ever pick the first draft. But what about you?
Okay, so I'll add to what you said, and I'll pick up some of the things that words that you used for your answer. For example, if I had to draft this answer using ChatGPT, so I would ask it not to use the word strive because that would make it ChatGPT and textbook. So that would be my first reaction to anything that ChatGPT curates. And in fact, while curating resumes as well, I tend to do this whenever I see something that sounds artificial, superficial, or let's say ChatGPT-ish, right? So I would ask it to remove those words and try and make it more human. But what happens is like that takes a lot of my time. So sometimes like I have to edit one paragraph 50 times and then it takes hours and hours of my time. So that brings me to my second question. How do you think like is this like a problem that you see, or like it's like one of the cons of AI is just that AI is so helpful that this is something that we could turn a blind eye to?
So I think what how I see is I would like to term it as analysis paralysis because
Okay.
this is something that we often
Again,
run
a
into.
ChatGPT term.
Yeah, maybe,
Nobody,
maybe. We just
nobody
never
in their
know.
day-to-day conversation would use this
Yeah.
phrase.
Maybe I think we are also evolving with ChatGPT and incorporating most of these words into our daily language as well. So I think it did come from ChatGPT only. So yes, analysis paralysis is something that I agree. Most of the time when I am writing my blogs, when I run through the analysis of it, I go into a fix. Whereas I do not know how to edit it further because ChatGPT just keeps on giving me too many questions, too many answers to all of my questions. And sometimes I just feel it is very difficult to pick the best one because at the end of the day, it is the human touch and the human analysis that is basically needed to be incorporated in that particular.
I agree. And not just blogs. I think even when I use ChatGPT in my personal life or whatever it is, like to be very honest, I'll be very transparent with the audience. So even while choosing the topic for this podcast, of course, I, straight away went to ChatGPT, did my research, so to say, and, it came up with 50 different topics. So this is the topic that I finally decided to, go ahead with. And even in my personal life, sometimes while I'm going to a party, I'll ask ChatGPT to, curate the look that I should be, wearing to the party. But I think it takes a lot of time. So I would, feel that this is actually a big time problem because it should ideally be saving my time, but I end up spending more, right? More of my time. So how do you think we can control this? Like an overthinker, like for example, okay, let's come back to work. Okay, let's say blogs or articles or a landing page that we're curating. Okay, so for the first draft, of course, would not be acceptable, right? We'll make a couple of tweaks. We'll tweak it according to the audience, the tone of the business that we are writing for. So where do you draw the line? How do you know that this is the final draft?
Okay, so I think how I start with is one of these terms that are coming up very often in most of our conversations these days is prompt engineering. So this
Okay.
is one thing I really am looking into, and I try to prompt engineer my prompt in a certain manner so that I don't have to go ahead and do multiple rounds of edits on it. So prompt engineering, where we're talking about how to write a particular prompt so that the very first draft it minimizes the amount of edits that we're going to make to it. So I think that is one way we can tackle how much amount of time we're spending on tackling all the edits that we're going to make to the final draft. So I think it's a personal choice as to how many final drafts can we have. Some people are overly particular about what they want to submit, what they want their work to sound like, or what the tone needs to be. But I think sometimes it's also just the boundary of our own mind which needs to be set.
Okay, so talking about prompt engineering, right? I get that. Okay, sometimes you might feel that you have the perfect prompt for whatever you need to write or whatever you need to do, but I believe that it has been now ingrained in our mind that the first draft would never be perfect, right?
Yeah.
So coming back to my question, so even if we have the perfect prompt, let's say I have the perfect prompt for an email or perfect prompt for a blog, okay, so the first draft that would come, that would not be acceptable to me. I'll need some tweaks, right? And no matter how much of prompt engineering I use, I'll never be satisfied with the final outcome that I have. So again, coming back to where do we draw the line? How do we know that this is what would work?
So I think I would have a counter question here. So would you rather write that entire piece by yourself or spend some more time in editing that blog?
No, you're right there. That is what ChatGPT does. I don't have to write anything from scratch anymore, and there's no writer's block per se.
Yes.
Yeah, something that we dealt with earlier in 2000s, right? So there's no writer's block. I don't have to start anything from scratch. You're right there. But okay, so I'll give you that. Okay, yeah, we can do that. That we can work on a draft, edit it. But the editing is what takes most of my time. Even if I have to write an email. Let's say I have to write to a client. Okay. In journal as well, right? Asking about feedback, so I'll have to tweak my tone, anything. Where do I know this is it? This is where I can stop.
I think, like I mentioned, this is a very personal choice as to where do we need to stop because there is no correct definition of what is right. So the way we want it to sound like, so in our heads, we need to be very sure of what the ultimate game needs to be. So I think it's a very personal choice. That would be my answer to this.
So there's no fixed formula like this. This is where we stop,
Yes,
right?
I don't think so. Not yet. At least for me, it hasn't been so far.
Okay, so now that we have established that it's a personal choice, although I don't agree, but let's say for the sake of discussion, it is a personal choice. Again, I don't believe so. But let's say it's a personal choice. That brings me to an even bigger question, right? Uh, if we, if we come up with a final draft, so to say, how do we decide that this is good enough? Like, who sets the benchmark, and what is the framework of a good enough draft? How do you know that this is good enough?
Okay, so talking about it from my own experience, I feel when I start writing, so already do have a benchmark in my head that this is the kind of content I would visualize. But of course, the amount of edits that we make, it constantly gets in the way of getting that final draft done. But the way I look at a final draft is it aligning with the initial prompt that I gave out? So maybe not all the tweaks, but what the initial idea I had in my mind, is it aligning with what the final draft looks like? So that is how I decide that this is the final one. It is aligning with the kind of content that I was wanting to prepare, the brand guidelines, the brand's tone, and the voice. That is how I go about it. But then I also again know that there is a certain degree of bias that can also be created through reverse like through too many prompts being given out. So AI models can be trained by the amount of prompts that we give out or the amount of files that we upload. So what is your take on it? Do you think your AI model is trained by your prompts?
I guess so. And now you have given me, really good idea. Now that you've talked about bias, okay. Okay. So while you were talking, I was thinking of a small exercise that we can, pull off for the audience, a live exercise, in fact. Okay. Now that you've talked about bias, so what we can do is let's try a prompt right here. Okay. So we could, both use our phones. I think you must have ChatGPT installed in your phone. I certainly do. Okay. So we could key in the same prompt at the same time, and let's see how our models differ in terms of response. And before we do that, just to confirm, you are also using the paid version of ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's try this right away. Okay. Okay, so let's try something fun. Okay, so we'll key in the exact same prompt, and the prompt would be write a short, yet politically correct. Of course, I don't want the HR to, fire me for this. Yet politically correct email to the HR. Email to the HR. I'm a bit slow. You'll have to bear with me. Okay, to the HR asking for an update about my pending appraisal.
So now that you mentioned that your manager is going to kill me, I'm sitting
Let's
right in
first
front of mine.
let's first tell you that we have the same prompt. So my prompt reads: write a short yet politically correct email to the HR asking for an update about my pending appraisal.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go. Okay, so are you done? Okay, so I have my response ready. So let me go first. Okay, so mine reads, "Dear HR, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to check in on the status of my pending appraisal. Could you please share an update on the progress or any expected timelines? Looking forward to your response." I think that's quite May, but okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead with mine. The subject line reads request for update on pending appraisal, and then it starts with dear HR representative's name. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to follow up on the status of my pending appraisal and check if there are any updates regarding the process or timeline. I appreciate any insights you can share and look forward to your response. Thank you for your time and support.
Okay, okay. I think both of our drafts are quite similar. The only difference I could notice is there is a change in vocabulary. Yours sounds a bit more polished, a bit more textbook like. But yeah, mine is quite short because that is what I trained ChatGPT to do. So I'll agree to your bias, the point about biases. It is a bit biased. I see that because most of my mails that I draft are quite short. So I agree. I'll agree to that. Okay. So this was fun.
All right, Vikas. So I think we've already seen it in action. The different prompts will yield different results, and biases will always creep in. So I think at the end of the day, we have to be the filter for our own prompts and our own outputs.
I agree. Okay, so on that note, here is a challenge for the audience. So the next time you write something, okay, you have to be the filter for whatever you write. Okay, you have to, not let AI creep in with the biases and not affect your content. Before we wrap up, we just want to leave you with a question. We just want to know if the conversation we had today, did it really help you? Did it make you things, see things differently, or this is something that you already knew? That's it. That's it from us today. So see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.